It would be easy to say Durarara is a series like no other, but I think that's not actually the case. The series is unique for sure, but I think Durarara feels like such a standout in part because it does things which normally ruin entire series in a way which actually adds value. There's nothing which shows this better than the first lines of the anime stated as,
"It was something that changed my life. But then again, nothing really changed at all."
This line sets the expectations for the entire series, and it genuinely delivers on the promise of this feeling. This is the most engaging aspect of Durarara, what's either deeply meaningful or completely faux philosophy depending on who you ask. In most series, this would be a throwaway line to try and force thematic relevance into a series that's lacking it by saying something which sounds smart but means absolutely nothing. That way, it's never technically wrong. But in today's series, it's rather core to the contradiction it explores. What really is the ordinary? What technically comprises daily life, especially in a city full of odds and ends? I want you to ponder this question, to hear that line and think it to be some meaningless narration, then to slowly realize that there is some truth to it simply because it can't be defined. And that's why I say it does things right that would normally be signs of terrible writing. Durarara is not trying to make you think it's saying something from nothing, it's simply pointing at the lack of definition and then allowing you to wonder about it on your own while a deeply engaging story plays out all around it. Something else it does well that most series fail on is introducing a large cast of characters and committing to utilizing them all. It does this better than most series where the characters pop in and out depending on arcs by having every occurrences be, at least in some way, tied to any and every character, whether it's them simply appearing in the background or as meaningful as having them be crucial for the backstory of another. Everyone is around and involved constantly, creating a web of characters that make the world feel truly alive, even if it does make the city itself feel a bit small given how much they run into each other. But for a series which thrives on the depth of human connection, the way in which small actions can impact those around us, this feeds directly into the point the series is making about the value of everyday life. We'll never know what small shift or change is going to change our lives until it's already happened, and it could be from anyone, anywhere, directly explored through the series' utilization of gangs. The plot takes many small arcs, but these all reside within the framing of a growing gang war between some easily identifiable factions and some which exist to be invisible. The invisible one, named the Dollars, is a gang with no rules and no clear leadership. Individually, they do nothing, but together they form an unstoppable beast. By utilizing their own talents and positions, they achieve whatever the moment needs, recognizing both individual contribution and also the power of combining it all together. But back to the large cast for a moment, because that also includes a set of 3 true main characters. While the story is slightly weighted to be Mikado's, Durarara is one of the few stories which feels as if it genuinely utilized a trio of protagonists. None of them feel absent while the others take the spotlight, and their stories all begin and end in the same place, making it feel extraordinarily cohesive. But the minor characters can shine just as much, and through a mixture of bearable tropes and interesting details, they feel very much alive and impactful. And because they're so unorthodox, they allow for some non-traditional delivery. By that I mean it reaches the conclusions of its themes in odd and memorable ways. Normally a character who caps off the presentation of love in a series would be carefully crafted to embody the traditional traits of love to show us a realistically perfect relationship. Done well, it can still feel unique, but it's something that we've seen before. Now, what about having a character who has no true love for the person they're in a relationship with, but loves them anyway because it's the closest they can ever get to what they want? They embody one specific trait about love that's positive: commitment, despite all the obvious flaws. 2 messed up characters come together to form this idea, and although they're exceptionally unideal, that simply allows us to see the few things about them which are positive. It may not be the healthiest, but we can respect such a commitment when both people find something positive in it, right? Or say there's a pair of friends who aren't really friends because they each recognize and acknowledge they're only using each other, one to meet people and the other to make herself look more appealing. But then what are friends? Is providing someone benefit by choosing to be around them what makes up a friendship, and so this would have to be so. Much like the faux philosophy, this follows a similar pattern. Present us with the unorthodox and have us question why it isn't normal, and then wonder if that's correct or incorrect. This questioning of love, both romantically and platonically, is something very much present in not just sections, but throughout the entire series. It wonders what love looks like, as we've already covered, but also does so with other characters. Could you love someone without a head? What about just a head? But could you even love at all? Or maybe you can, but you simply don't think you can because you've never recognized love and called it as such. But then how do we ever know we've found love if we can't recognize it? And then can we even have it if we don't love ourselves? And then how does that love connect to our past and present? If we're obsessed with what's gone, we'll miss what's to come, and if we try to force something to persist, we'll miss the very thing right now. I think this is one thing the anime makes a direct point on, and that's focusing on the present, once again in line with daily life and love. We should appreciate what we have while we have it. It won't be what it once was, and it'll never exist for forever, so what can we do but enjoy it while it's here? That kind of commotion that still resolves in a theme is the best thing about Durarara. As always, I don't need to say much as to the animation, as you've been watching it for a few minutes now. The most I can say is it is from 2010, and that shows in the ways you'd expect. Some scenes are dynamic, but to account for that, a few others are very static. Luckily, the interesting writing and good voice acting keeps the scenes engaging through that. Now, you will notice immediately that the true background characters are all gray, and I can't confirm if this decision was made for style or cost. Either way, the series made it a part of its identity, so I personally had no issues with it. With a large cast often surrounded by others, it helps to keep things straight, as well as easily highlighting the yellow patches on certain characters which are relevant to the plot which might have been otherwise missed. And because this series is about the mundane and ordinary, it feels fitting that most characters in the background are such. This is even worked into a specific moment where they suddenly become flushed with color as the true strength of a common life holds is revealed, meaning it's also a thematic touch. As for the soundtrack, it's downright fantastic. There are orchestral pieces for dramatic moments, simple melodies with only a couple instruments to highlight beauty and simplicity, haunting drags with elongated rhythms for mystery and horror, and odd and halting pieces for the weirdness of the city. There's a few tracks I constantly use when writing, like Their Aspirations and The Girl in the Drawing. Each track has a specific purpose, and for an anime which generally doesn't confine itself to one genre, this helps create the necessary feeling for each. While you could overall label the series a mystery due to the ever-increasing drip of information from minor arcs through the major ones, it would be wrong to call it that simply and move on. With the unexplained and odd occurrences they witness, the series isn't simply grounded in our reality, although it takes from it. There's aspects from a mixture of folklore and mythology, so you could umbrella it all with supernatural to reach a somewhat satisfactory conclusion, but you couldn't get more specific than that. And there's some episodes that lean heavily into horror, while sometimes also taking the angle of psychology as well, and of course, some doing both at once. And in between all of this, there's the slice of life moments which create the basis for the series' drama, so we can't forget about those either. No one episode could give you a perfect feel for what the series is bringing to the table, just like how almost every character gets to narrate an episode. It keeps you guessing. As such, I don't think it's worthwhile to give a list of similar anime because each would be hyper-specific to one or two elements. And I want to finish on what's probably many people's either favorite or least favorite aspect of Durarara, Izaya or Ihara. Love him or hate him, I think he's perfectly indicative of the entire series. He embodies the qualities of cheesy villains across years of stories, moving pieces around the chessboard like everyone is his pawn, musing about his overall plan and how much of a mastermind he is, making overly dramatic appearances and doing absolutely insane actions seemingly for the sake of it, but because the series and also he don't take it too seriously, it doesn't feel like a flaw where it might elsewhere. He's campy, at times even recognizing his own ridiculousness, and the anime isn't shy about effacing him every now and then to remind us he isn't a complete mastermind. He still is one, not predicting everything before it happens though, rather making a plan which doesn't require every specific thing to work out to some exact degree. For his end goal, he's simply stirring the pot and seeing what chaos arises, meaning he can look at everything as exactly what he wanted and then claim so. He's both exceptionally smart and also endlessly childish. Much like everything else, his truth is simply unclear, whether he's always lying or always telling the truth, or neither. And like the narration which accompanies every episode, it's a value which can either be appreciated or ignored in the series. Did you find something meaningful in it? If so, that's great. If not, then it probably sounded good at least, and it was sure as hell entertaining and interesting enough on even a basic level to be engaging for either a serious or casual watch. And it's a rare case where I think the narration actually adds value. It isn't telling us what it should be showing, it's pointing our minds in the right direction, highlighting the oddities it wants us to ponder. Could it have technically been done better without it? Maybe, but then that wouldn't be Durarara. It's a series which isn't supposed to be perfect, doesn't take itself too seriously, while still saying or at least pointing us to meaningful ideas about ourselves and our own lives. With that, I think Durarara is the closest thing I've known to an anime for everyone. As always, a huge thanks to our patrons, but of course to everyone for giving me a few minutes of your time, and I hope you'll do so again sometime very soon.